I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us. We have many more stories left to get to on this Friday afternoon. One of them, the Justice Department ordering the IRS to turn over former President Trump's tax returns to Congress. Joining me right now is Washington Post reporter Devlin Barrett. He covers the Justice Department and national security for the Post. Devlin, so good to see you on this Friday. When I first heard the news today, my initial thought was elections have consequences. There's a new administration. There's a new attorney general. Was this anticipated today? Did you see this coming?
I think we knew that the Justice Department was going to have to make a decision about this. We didn't know exactly when, and it's been a busy news day in other ways today at the Justice Department. But they were going to have to make a decision about this, and it's not entirely surprising that this is where they came down on it. I think because there's already some court rulings that would have suggested that this is where the courts were going to end up, and I do think that this is one of the ways in which all those legal fights that surrounded Trump when he was president didn't go away just because he stopped being president. That there's going to be months and perhaps years of legal fighting and positioning to take care of some of the legacy issues surrounding the Trump administration. And
Devin, House Ways and Means can now move forward with their investigation. Can you kind of go into the parameters of what they are looking into still from the Trump administration? What do they intend to find now that they have this ruling today?
Well, what they want to find, what they say their purpose is to understand whether there were national security issues tied to Trump's finances, whether the stated purpose of this was to determine whether there were issues with the audits surrounding the president, how the IRS essentially polices a president's taxes. Obviously, there are plenty of folks, especially Republicans, who think that is a fig leaf explanation. What they really want here is politics and to embarrass the former president. But there's an important step that has to come first, and this isn't necessarily over. President Trump's lawyers signaled earlier this year that if this came to pass, they still wanted the option to argue in court that the courts should block the IRS from handing this information over to Congress. We haven't heard yet from the president or his legal team on this issue, but there's still a possibility, I should say, that the president will try to keep fighting this on his own with his own lawyers.
Yeah, Devlin, that was my next question. It was surprising we have still not had a statement from the former president about this decision today. And that was my next question. What legal recourse does the former president have to stop this? Because, in the Trump administration, even federal courts said that this could not go forth. I believe it almost went up to the Supreme Court. And so now with a new attorney general, a new Department of Justice, a new administration, it looks like that this is happening. And so, does he have any recourse?
He does. So there was a live case. That case has basically been dormant since he stopped being the president. But that case still exists. He can still fight it if he chooses to. I think the big question here is, how much does the former president want to fight in court over these issues? We saw another case unrelated to this today where Trump basically signaled he wasn't interested in paying lawyers to fight anymore on the issue. Now that case is a little different. There's different facts, different issues involved. But the real question now is how much does the former president want to fight in court to prevent this from happening?
And my other question was too, how does this kind of dovetail with the New York AG's and the district attorney there in New York's investigation of the Trump Organization with the recent indictment of Alan Weisselberg? Are they related at all? Because we know the Supreme Court ruled that the New York the district attorney, Cy Vance, could get those tax returns, I believe 8 years worth. So do you see any comparisons or similarities with this now?
So I think the similarities are that, when Trump was the president, obviously he didn't release his taxes, which some people took offense at. And ever since that time, a lot of different entities have been essentially trying to find different ways, different means to get at those returns and find out what they say. Now, they're doing it for different purposes. Obviously, the Manhattan DA's office has a different goal in mind when it looks at those tax returns. It's looking for any evidence of crimes, and it's charged the Trump Organization CFO. But Ways and Means are looking for, essentially, in their oversight role, any evidence of, unfair treatment, favorable treatment, that sort of thing. And, so they're but all of these questions, all these entities that are coming at him, it's all around the question of his taxes. And so that's the commonality. And, taxes in this country are considered private information for most people. And it'll be interesting to see, as these different entities looks at his taxes, how much of that information, if any, spills out into the public.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting to me about this is, the Trump DOJ had their own legal interpretation of this via the Office of Legal Counsel. Now, the Biden administration and their DOJ has another legal interpretation of this. And in your piece today in the Post, you said they had to find a legitimate legislative purpose in order to, garner these tax returns. In your view, what would that be? We are obviously President Trump is no longer president, and so any investigations looking into his business dealings, conflicts of interest, ties with the Russia investigation, they still want to go after that.
Right, and so there's a 1924 law that says that particular committee, because it writes tax laws, can look at an individual's tax returns for the purpose of looking at how the IRS or anyone else conducts audits. That's important because, if you remember, Trump has long said his taxes were under audit, and that's why he wasn't releasing them. So essentially, this committee is invoking its power as an auditor of the auditors, essentially, to go looking at this. Again, because this is such a politically loaded issue, there's a lot of Republicans who think that's just an excuse. They just want to rummage around in Trump's money and see if they can find anything bad about it. But that is the framework that the committee is using to pursue these papers, these tax returns. And, like I said, there's still a chance that Trump decides to send his lawyers to court to fight this. We're still asking that question to see if that happens.
All right, Devlin, just to sum up things here, what will you be looking for in this going forward? Do you think there'll be any immediate action at the House Ways and Means Committee to kind of, do closed hearings on this once they receive them? Do you foresee this getting kind of still mired in the courts?
It's a great question, and I think there's sort of two stages to look at this. One is the stage of the courts. Is there going to be more legal fighting over this? Or are and if there is, how is that going to play out in terms of Trump versus essentially two branches of the government? Second, assuming the committee actually gets these documents, that's the other stage. And that's the point where I think it'll be really interesting to see what decisions the lawmakers make and how partisan it gets in terms of, okay, the Democrats say they are looking for evidence of national security threats, evidence of conflicts of interest. What do you do with any such information, assuming it's there? What do you do with any such information you find? Because, again, the Republicans' charge here is that this is just a fishing expedition. And, how do you present, if you were going to present any information, either through a committee or through documents, how do you present it in a way that has credibility? I think those are the questions that I think we're all going to be trying to answer as this plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe, if the former president does decide to run in 2024, maybe once again, kind of Groundhog Day type, will Trump's tax returns be in play during that election cycle? Anyway, Washington Post reporter Devlin Barrett, thanks for coming on Live Now from Fox to break that all down for us. We appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. You too.